Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Diana Sanchez, and I'm with the TCU Alumni Association. I'm here with my colleagues Brooke Schumann, also from the Alumni Association, and Terrence Hood from the Career Center. I'm so excited to have you all join us. We're going to give a couple minutes for everyone to get logged in before we get started with our special guest, Hallie Crawford, who will talk to us about finding the job you love. Let's see. Still waiting on some people.
Yeah, we'll give them a minute. And I am in a sunroom. And so I'm sitting right where the kind of part of the window, in between the window right now, so that, I don't get the glare. I love that my office is a sunroom, but this is the problem in the fall. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. And I'm just going to move around a little bit if I need to as I go. And I do have two screens. So when you see me kind of looking back and forth, that's obviously why, so I can run things.
All right, so we're gonna get started.
Okay.
I'll allow Terrence Hood to introduce himself, and then we'll turn it over to you, Hallie.
Awesome.
Right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Terrence Hood from the TCU Career Center, and I'm Associate Director for Alumni Career Services. So I look forward to working with you on anything in terms of your job search, resume, networking, LinkedIn, interview prep. You can make appointments with me using Handshake, but I look forward to working with you on your job search needs, and we always appreciate Hallie for being with us. And thank you so much, Hallie, for being with us again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. No problem. I'm excited to be here today with you all. Diana, is there anything else you'd like to say before we get going?
I think we're good to go.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So just as a quick reminder, everyone, this webinar is going to be recorded, so you should receive a copy of it. And we'll talk in the next couple of slides about how you can get a copy of our slides, et cetera, as well. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today to talk about 3 steps, and a little bit more than that. We're going to talk about several things to landing a job that you love. So it's going to be a little bit of the career direction, and also talking about like identifying different career options for you and brainstorming ideas. So just by way of quick introduction for me, I'm a certified career coach, speaker, and author. My company is based in Atlanta, Georgia. We have coaches all over the country and resume writers, and we've been coaching and training since 2002. I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a grad degree, a master's degree from the University of Illinois. And I have been partnered with TCU. It's a long time. I don't know how many years, but I think it's been at least over 5 years. And I'm a very proud partner. These webinars are always fantastic in terms of engagement and questions and all of that. So let's go ahead and dive in. Bottom line, as we all know and have experienced, the way we work has changed pretty much for good. COVID, with the advent of artificial intelligence, and just there's a lot of changes, I feel like, in the workplace and in the workforce and how we perform our jobs. And one of the things that we have found a lot, it was during, but also in the years post-COVID, that a lot of our clients are telling us that their priorities have changed. What's important to them out of their job and their profession and their career, that has changed a lot. What we also hear is what we want from our work has changed, that, people want more meaning from what they do. They want to have greater work-life balance. They want to have greater connection, if you will, to the mission of their organization. And obviously, the third item on this slide here at the bottom, the way we perform our jobs is so completely different, whether it's remote work or not. And even if you are back in person, we all know that we're still performing Zoom meetings, sometimes with a person down the hall, because some of the other people on the meeting are somewhere else. So we're not going back. And I think there are a lot of positive, good changes to this. So here's what we're going to talk about today, given everything that has gone on in the past several years, is we want you to take 3 main steps to identify and secure a job that you love and be really clear about your career path. That's kind of our goal for today, to give you some tools for that. So we're going to talk first about defining fulfillment, what that means and how you can define it for yourself. And there's several different ways to do that. We'll talk about our ideal career model. If you've been on a webinar with us before, this is a cornerstone of what we use as a tool with our clients for a lot of different purposes. So we'll go through that today in greater depth to discuss why we think this is so incredibly helpful to help you land the right job. And finally, we've got a very specific career brainstorming process that we recommend to our clients that will help you think outside the box a little bit more about what job or career ideas could actually be a really good fit for you. See what else is out there that you didn't even know existed. And if you follow these 3 steps in this process, what we find is you're going to find or come up with a lot more ideas than you had in the first place and find things that could be a really good fit for you. We will have time for Q&A at the end. And if anyone would like a copy of the slides, in addition to automatically getting a copy of the recording, you can email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com. Okay, let's dive in a little bit more. One of the first things I wanted to say to kind of set the stage is that we want you, when you're thinking about landing a job you love and what the right path would be, we want you to know that nothing's going to be perfect, and have the right perspective when you're looking for the right or ideal career path. And the right perspective, we assert or believe, is that couple of things. Number one, nothing's going to be perfect every single second of the day. There's always going to be stuff that you don't like as much about what you do, whether it's certain tasks that you'd rather not have to perform, whether it's a coworker that you don't get along with quite as well, or whether it's elements of the work environment. So nothing is going to be absolutely perfect. We all have to compromise in some way, shape, or form with our career paths. But you can find a job that the good stuff about it so far outweighs those things that you don't like as much that you barely notice them. And that's what we're going for. So the right perspective to have is, number one, the majority of what you do all day, every day is really good. And so those few things that you have to do sometimes or deal with every once in a while or whatever it is, part of your day, you can deal with those. It's not as big of a deal. And the second thing to think about here is when you're choosing where you're compromising with your career path and with your job, you're going to feel a lot better versus being just sucked into something and you're like, gosh, I'm not really sure if this is the right fit. And I didn't choose these areas where I'm having to compromise. That doesn't feel so good. So being at choice is huge. And the reason why it's really, really important to be in a job that you either love, or you might want to say, I truly enjoy it, or I get a really good sense of satisfaction or accomplishment out of it. Because, by the way, some of our clients are like, I don't know that I have to feel passionately about my work. It could be something that I really enjoy or feel engaged in, whatever it is. It's really important because if we start here on the left-hand side, there's too many people that are either quiet quitting or unhappy in their jobs. I think these numbers and statistics from what we have read and seen out of surveys, et cetera, they've gone up because all of this stuff happened post-COVID, the great resignation, the great reshuffle. I feel like we went through like 10 different great things or whatever it was. So there's too many people that just aren't like quite in the right fit and they need to get on the right path. And we'd love to do our first poll here if we could, because we're curious for the people attending here today, how many people feel like they're slightly unsatisfied, they're unsatisfied kind of in the mid-range, they're like thinking about, I might need to make a change and I'm thinking about maybe making a move, but I got to figure it out, versus I'm about to quit today, about to run out the door with my hair on fire. So we'll give you a moment to complete this poll. And one of the exercises, and we'll talk to you about this as we go here, and I just wanted to make a note about something I want to make sure we answer later. Okay, good. Is one of the first exercises we would recommend is actually listed on this slide here in the middle. Something that will help you be more objective about what's going on, what needs to be adjusted and changed, and how dramatic of a change you need to make. So we'll talk about that more in a second. We'll give you a moment to do the poll. All right, and we'll go ahead and share the results here if we've got kind of a critical mass. We're at least close to it. And as we're pulling those up to see what our results are, and part of why we do this survey, just by the way, is to help you understand too that you're not alone. It's totally normal to be in any of these places. The goal is to start working on this as soon as possible, because whatever you will need to do in terms of a career change, transition, whatever, it takes a little bit of time. So you want to work on it now. So what we've got so far, really interestingly, is 41% kind of neck and neck in terms of the dissatisfaction. And I'm really glad that we don't have people, as many people, I should say, in the I'm about to quit cold turkey and leave today. So please know that all of the steps that we're talking about today are going to be relevant for each of your scenarios or situations. It's more about, I would say, how quickly you need to move through these steps and how much time you need to spend as soon as possible working through them. So the first thing that we want to recommend you do to be more objective about what's really going on, what you need to change, and what you could leave alone in terms of your career path is to separate what works and what doesn't for your job right now. Create a list of likes and dislikes. Here are the things on the left-hand side that I like. Here are the things on the right-hand side that I don't like. And the key here is to, number one, understand or like identify first, like, okay, how many likes versus dislikes are there? How lopsided is it? Because that can let you know how dramatic of a change you may or may not need to make. And the second thing to do is to identify themes in what you're saying. So for example, if a lot of what your dislikes are relate to your work environment versus the actual tasks that you're performing or the industry that you're in, that could mean that you need to be doing the same thing that you're doing now or something very similar or related, just at a different organization in a different work environment. So it's really important to clarify, these likes and dislikes, but also understand and kind of bucket your answers using our ideal career model, because that can give you a sense of, okay, exactly what needs to change and how you need to make those changes. Part of what we want you to think about here too is the second bullet point on this slide. Also, give yourself a few minutes to think about as well, like, what is permanent dissatisfaction for you? How long have you been unsatisfied? And when you're looking at your different likes and dislikes, are any of them like more temporary, where it's more about, I really don't like working on this particular type of project or with this specific client. And so that's going to end in a few months. So it actually should get better at that point. All of these things, the reason why we point all of this out is because when our clients come to us, normally they feel like, I have to go do something so completely different from what I'm doing now in order to be happy. For example, one of our clients who is a consultant at one of the big four consulting firms, when she first came to us, she said, I feel like maybe I should go be a chef, like something completely different. But when she worked with us through the process, she actually identified, and this happens with a good number of our clients, that it was more of a course correction that she needed to make. And what she decided was the right path for her was going in-house instead and doing in-house consulting, so to speak, being in business strategy within an organization versus externally as a consultant. Okay. So the good news, as we're saying, is you can find this sense of direction and fulfillment. It takes a little bit of time and thought, but you can make it happen. And the other good news, I think, is don't feel like, even if you're really frustrated and unsatisfied about where you are and really uncertain about what you should do next, don't go to the extreme necessarily and say, well, because of that, maybe I need to do something completely different. A lot of the times you can make more of a shift, a course correction, or look at things, career paths that are adjacent to what you're doing now, similar or related, and that can actually fit the bill. So just kind of noodle on that a little bit. There's no problem if you do need to make a big change, because plenty of our clients do, but we just want you to be more objective about things and really analyze, okay, what's working, what's not working, then I can decide what I need to do next. So the first step to figuring out a job that you love and landing it is to define fulfillment for you. And what does fulfillment mean for you professionally at this stage in your career, at the age that you're at, and how that relates to your personal life and what you want to have at this point in your career out of your career. So defining fulfillment, on the next slide, we'll explain a little bit more why it's so important. But what we find is that it's different for everybody. Like, you might say, well, don't most people want to work remotely or have work-life balance or some of the same things that I want to have? Sure, maybe a lot of people do, but some people actually don't want to work remotely and they want to be in the office all the time. Some people will tell us like they're, more interested in working, longer hours right now because they want to get a certain skill set in order to move up. So fulfillment can mean a lot of different things to different people. Don't assume that what you think is fulfillment is the same thing with everyone else, and therefore it's kind of like ho-hum and not a big deal to look at. The reason why we like people to start with fulfillment first when they're identifying the right job and path for them and going to pursue it is, number one, on the left-hand side here, it's usually the most difficult thing for people to define, because you can't just go take a test and it says like, okay, this is what is fulfilling for you, versus with your strengths, for example, you can take a strengths finder assessment or something like that. The second reason why we like it a lot in starting with it first versus other things like, well, this is what I'm good at, this is my past experience, and I need to get paid this much, so I'm going to brainstorm that way. Looking at fulfillment first and leaving those things to the side at the beginning help you think outside the box with your ideas more. You're going to expand your thinking a lot more by thinking about fulfillment first. So it's going to give you more career ideas, looking at the right-hand side here, closer to things that would actually give you meaning. And it's going to help you uncover career paths out there that you didn't even know existed. Then you can narrow those ideas down based on practical considerations. I can't tell you how many times clients will come to us and they'll be like, well, what if there's something else out there that I just, I haven't found it yet, or, I just don't know that it exists. And even like if they choose a path, they'll have this kind of voice in their head or like a regret, like, well, should I have taken a little bit more time to think about this and see what else is out there? This is why we have you do this, because it helps you really cover your bases in a really good way. The other reason why we like you to start with fulfillment too is this is our ideal career model. We'll go into greater depth with it in a few slides here in just a couple minutes. But the other reason why we think it's so important, and we use it kind of as the cornerstone and beginning of our process with clients, is it really impacts all other elements of our career fit and satisfaction. And the other pieces impact it. It's kind of like vice versa both ways. So for example, studies have shown that if you are not leveraging your strengths in your job and the strengths that you really want to be leveraging, you're not going to be fulfilled. If you're not getting paid in a way that feels adequate or fair to you, you're not going to be fulfilled, and vice versa. So it really does interplay with all of the other pieces of the model, which again is part of why we want you to define it first. And then finally, on the bottom right-hand side of this slide here, as we all know, our work life impacts us personally as well. So if we're not in the right fit and we're not getting at least some sense of like satisfaction or like I got something done today, accomplishment or whatever, we're going to feel like we're spinning our wheels and not like having a sense of purpose. We spend a lot of time at work. And for a lot of people, not every single person, but I would say for the majority of us who are working, whether it's part-time or even full-time, especially full-time, I would say, it gives us a sense of identity. I mean, it's part of our identity. And if a part of our identity, in some cases for people, it's a large part, it is for me, if it's not working, you're not going to feel very good just overall. Okay. So let's talk next about how to define fulfillment. There's some ways listed on this slide here, and I'll talk through each one for just a moment. So a couple of different things. And I would actually recommend that you use all of these, because I find that none of these are going to take you like 3 hours, each to work through it. They shouldn't take that incredibly long. And I find that if you use all of them, you're kind of coming at this in different ways. And the good part about that is it'll help you uncover what's really there. But also, once you start to see themes and kind of redundancies in the things that you might be saying, by journaling about how you define success, et cetera, then you're on the right track. If you're saying the same thing over and over again, it's a good thing because that's validation that, yeah, okay, these really are my values because I've looked at these in different ways. So number one is to journal about how you define success. This can take 5 minutes. You can do it before you go to bed tonight. Easy peasy. But what does success mean to you at this stage in your life, in your career, whatever? Just think about it, for you right now. How do you define success? And it can be helpful to even think about, has it changed over the past several years and how so? And getting clear on that can give you a clearer sense of, what's going to be really rewarding and fulfilling to me in this next phase. The second thing we would suggest is to just think for a few minutes, and journaling about this, I think, is a good idea as well, to dig underneath the things that you do outside of work, your interests, your passions, your hobbies, those things where you lose track of time. You can think about the things that are like this inside of work as well, but we really like for you to think about the personal things first, because that gets closer to who you are as a person and, deep down, what's going to be really important to you. And the reason why we want you to think about them is the question, or the way we want you to think about them is the question we want you to ask yourself is, why do I enjoy this? Why is this cool for me? What is it about it that's enjoyable? Because we're not saying that some of your hobbies could be career paths. For some people, absolutely. But what we're saying here is that the reason why you're drawn to those things can give you clues to possible values for you. Okay. And I'll give you an example of what we're talking about in terms of values with this last exercise on the bottom right-hand side. A third thing you can do, and some of our clients, especially those who are really visual, like to create like a vision board for their ideal day at work. You could create a vision board, you could write about this, whatever's best for you. But it's a great idea to think about, okay, what qualities would my ideal day have? What would I be doing? Who would the type of people I'd be working with? What types of projects would I be working on? What strengths and skills would I be using? Those types of things. And then finally, one of the first exercises that we will do with our clients is to help them identify what their top 3 career values are. It can be top 3 to 5. So a range of values that you want to target identifying, by the way, is between like 3 and 5. Any more than that, we find kind of tends to muddy the waters and make it a little bit more confusing. But what we do is we have people think about, identify, and write about a peak experience exercise. And what we mean by this is it's a moment in time or a period of time in their life when they felt really lit up inside, like things were rocking and rolling, they were in the flow, like whatever. And it could be a moment or a period of time. We've had some clients, for example, say it was when I graduated from getting my MBA. Another man said one time, when I thought this one was so interesting, he remembers being the editor of his high school yearbook as like a peak experience for him. And what we want you to do is write down what was cool about that for you. Why is it a peak experience? It's a little bit less about the details of it and more about why was this cool. Give you a quick example. So 2 clients may have the same or a very similar peak experience. Let's call it, a trip overseas. Okay, fine. And one client, when they talk with us about their trip overseas, they may be talking about, the planning. Where are we going to go? How many days are we going to spend there? How are we going to get to the different places? The logistics and planning and that type of thing. That person is more likely to be like a project or program manager, or maybe in operations or, planning in some way, shape, or form, like an analyst or something like that. Okay. Another person may have the same peak experience, a trip overseas, but what was cool about it for them was more the people that they were with, the art and the culture and the food that they got to experience, the new stuff going on over there. They may be more likely to be the type of person, for example, who's like an event planner or a relationship manager or an account manager or client manager, something like that, because they're more about the people or something else. Okay. So this just gives you kind of a quick example of how, even if people have the same peak experience, when you start to think about what was cool about it for each person, they could say completely different things, which means that their values could be really, really different. So we would encourage you to use all of these exercises. And part of why I say that is what I said before, identifying the overlap in the themes, but also because one of these exercises may resonate a little bit more for you based on how you think and your learning style too. Okay. we've talked about, or I started to kind of allude to values. And the reason why we're bringing up values is basically values are your guidepost to fulfillment. And this is why it's a really good idea to be clear about what your career values are, because they can help you brainstorm and narrow down possible ideas for you. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through our career brainstorming process. Your values are your guidepost to fulfillment. And just by the way, values are not ethics or morals. They can be, like you might have some personal values that are ethics or morals for you, but they're more things that when we align our life and our career with them, we're going to feel lit up. So it's a little bit bigger, so to speak, than the ethics or morals, for lack of a better way to say it. Values tend to be a subconscious way that we already make decisions. So right now in your life and in your career, to a certain extent, you're probably making decisions aligned with your values in some way, shape, or form. But the deal is, and what happens to us is that because they tend to operate subconsciously, for most of us, when we don't think about them as proactively as we could and have them top of mind, sometimes we don't make decisions aligned with them as much as we could, or it might be close, but not quite. And so what we want to do, our goal is to have you making your career choices more aligned with them proactively and in a conscious way versus having them kind of running in the background, so to speak. Okay. And there is a difference, kind of our final thought on this idea of values, and then we'll keep going to look at our career model, is there is a difference. When we work with our clients, there usually is at least a little bit of a difference, between their personal and career values. I'll say a couple of things about this. And actually, if we could launch our next poll now, that would be great. Give people a chance to work on that. So here's the deal. To know the difference between your personal and career values tend to be higher priority for you as a person. So normally people have like their top two values are normally their personal values or career values as well. And personal values tend to be, it's not always like this, but tend to be a little bit lower on their list in terms of priority. And bottom line, you might say to yourself, okay, I'm okay with honoring this value in my personal life. And I'll use me as a quick example. So two of my top values just as a person are authenticity and risk. Authenticity is a big one in driving how we and I run our business, how we approach coaching our clients, how we, have created our career process to help them be more authentic people in their professional lives, bottom line. I also have at the bottom of my list, it's still a value for me, but health and wellness. But that one for me is a little bit lower on my list. And it's something that I'm okay with honoring more in my personal life, meaning I eat healthy and organic food and, buy that for my son. I'm careful about buying organic products and, really clean, like cleaning stuff for my house and blah, 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 that type of thing. So health and wellness is a value for me, but it's not at the top of my list, which would mean maybe that I should go work at a fitness company or, work as a fitness instructor or something like that. It's okay for me to honor that in my personal life, and that still makes me feel good. That's kind of how you can start to know the difference between those. So I'm really curious to see what our results are. I have found in the past year or so in a really good way that more and more people seem to be understanding and aware of this concept of values and know what they are when we do this poll. So if we could share the results, that would be fantastic. And if you don't, that's okay. Part of why we're doing this again is to let you know you're not alone. And that's so interesting. It's neck and neck. Okay. So we've got 50% are saying yes, that's fantastic. For those of you who feel like you know them, that is great. What we want you to think about is, okay, what's the right next career step for me aligned with those values? And by the way, what we tell people is we want them to evaluate or reevaluate their values about twice a year, every 6 months, so that you can figure out if any of your values have changed in terms of priority, but also how you may be defining them a little bit differently at this stage in your life. And for those of you who don't, these exercises that we were talking about a few minutes ago to help you start to uncover what they are can be so great. By the way, when you're working on these exercises, it can be incredibly helpful to share what you've come up with a friend, a family member. This is why we are coaches and work with our clients on this. So share it with us. And we can help you clarify what those values are, name them, define them, and then you can start to see, okay, what are some of the values I have that could point me in career ideas or towards career ideas, I should say. So for example, if you have a value of mentoring or education or working with numbers, like those are the types of things that could help you brainstorm career ideas. Keep in mind that some of your values are going to be more about work-life balance is important to me. And that's more of a work environment thing versus like, okay, am I going to go find a career path in work-life balance? Okay, obviously that doesn't make sense. So keep in mind as you're thinking about your career values, some of them are going to be work environment related that you can get in a lot of places, but some of them will point you in a possible direction. And that's what you want to be looking for as part of this. Let's go to our next step, and this is step number 2, and it's our ideal career model. These are the 8 components that what we find if people consider all of these, they are going to head on the right career path. They're going to brainstorm the right amount of ideas, narrow things down, and figure it out at the end of the day. The ideal career model helps you clarify your direction and also can help you understand your brand a little bit more too. And I'll explain that just really quickly. We'll go into greater depth with the pieces of the model in just a moment. But when you're thinking about branding and selling yourself and landing your dream job or a job you enjoy, you want to incorporate the components of the model, your strengths, your education, your experience, and your personality type. This is where your soft skills come in. So these can also help you understand your brand. So here are some things that we want you to think about related to the model. And then on the next slide, we'll go into greater depth with each of the pieces. So some of the stuff to consider to think about, okay, what would be the right career path for me at this point? What strengths you want to continue to leverage versus those you want to move on from? Sometimes we will have clients tell us, I'm great at spreadsheets, but I'm so sick of doing them, or, whatever it is. You want to think also in the middle of the slide here about what are your transferable skills and how can you market those? This is for people when you're thinking about making a change and you're trying to sell yourself for that new direction. What you want to focus on a little bit less, obviously, is your industry specific knowledge and expertise, and more on, okay, what are the transferable skills that I could bring to this new industry or new organization? And then finally, really important piece to things, and we'll show you our model on the next slide and why this is so important. What's the right work environment for you? And I bring this one up because it tends to be a make or break for people. It's a really big deal. And it's something that can cause a lot of dissatisfaction when everything else is actually in place. And people sometimes mistake, like I said earlier, I need to make a dramatic change versus, no, I just need to do what I'm doing in a different place that's going to be better for me. Okay. So let's look next at our ideal career model. And we really want you to consider each piece of the model in depth so that you make sure you head down the right path. So the first piece is fulfillment. We've covered that one. The next piece is the enjoyment piece. And what we mean here is if you think of the main things that you do all day, every day, for example, you're a lawyer, you're a data analyst, you're an event planner, you're a coach, that's the cake, right? The enjoyment piece helps you identify what's the icing on the cake. What are the other tasks that you might want to perform as part of those, that main task that you're responsible for. And this is really important too, because this is where you can start to narrow down different jobs at different places, depending on what's involved with the job that you're looking at. So for example, we will have some clients who are like, well, I'd like a job in sales. Okay, fine. Well, there's different types of sales. There's sales where it's straight like cold calling and going out there and, pounding the pavement, so to speak. There's consultative sales where the clients more so are brought to you, but you've got to be a really good advisor along the way for tailoring, for example, the technology or the software to them and kind of rolling it out for them. And there's sales positions that are more like account management, where you're just kind of keeping people happy in a basic way. So the enjoyment piece actually is important because it's kind of like the fine-tooth comb with your ideas. The next thing we want you to think about, and we go to the left here and then we go up and across, is your strengths. Identify and be clear on what your top 5 strengths are. Leverage a strengths finder assessment, interview other people to find out what your strengths are. But you really need to know, okay, these are the strengths that I enjoy the most and what I want to be leveraging in the next job that I'm in. And you need to be clear about those, what those top kind of priority items are. When you're thinking about and brainstorming ideas, you can think back to classes you took at TCU and the ones that you really enjoyed, because that can give you clues to things that maybe you ought to be doing or steering your career in that direction. It was really funny because even though when I was starting to think about my career path, it was several years out of college being at Vanderbilt. But when I thought about it, I was like, I really liked those psychology classes, the communication classes, the education classes. That helped me think about, okay, what I wanted to do as a coach. We want you to also think about your past experience. Is there experience and kind of peak moments professionally that you're like, those were really cool. Let me think about those a little bit more and how that could relate to career ideas. And finally, last but absolutely not least, is you need to think about your personality type when you're looking at career ideas, because it's very important. For example, if you're more introverted, you need to be in a job that allows you and enables you to be more introverted versus forcing you to be extroverted. You need to be working with the right people in the right role. The personality piece is a big one, and it interplays enormously with work environment too, which we've talked about a lot. Finally, compensation is critically important. But going back to what we said earlier, if you start with the fulfillment and the enjoyment pieces, even let's say, you can start to narrow down that big list that you get, brainstorming and thinking out loud, based on your qualifications and what's going to be practical and realistic for you to pursue. But at that point, because you've handled it this way, you've got a really nice big kind of list and you can start to funnel them down, but you're going to get closer to something that is really a good fit because you're using our model, but also you gave yourself that time for that expansive thinking, if you will. Okay. So if anyone would like to learn more about our services, please feel free to schedule a free consult with me. I always do this with prospective clients to make sure it's the right fit, make suggestions for what we might do with you, figure out what the right path is for you. The email address on this slide is the same as getting the slides from us. So it's the same thing there if you've already written it down. Feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to chat with you anytime. Let's talk next about career brainstorming. And I saw one question come through. You email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com, and I will put this in the chat right now. That's how you can get a copy of our slides. So I'll just do this right now while I'm thinking about it. And we would be happy to share those with you. You will receive a copy of the recording or the recording automatically. Okay, let's talk about step number 3, and that's career brainstorming. It's really hard to brainstorm and see what else is out there, right? People get overwhelmed really easily. There's so many different factors to consider, which is why we have our career model. And understandably, I mean, that's why, we have people come to us and to help them kind of sort through all of this, because we know it can be incredibly overwhelming for them. So one of the things we'd like to suggest is that as you're working through our career model and the exercises we've just talked about, it can be really helpful to talk with supportive, keyword, friends and family members about some of your ideas. See if they have any additional ideas for you. See if they can help you narrow them down a little bit. And we'll launch our third, and this will be our last poll for today, now, if we could, because I'm curious who you have brainstormed ideas with, if anybody. Now, I want to be clear about this and just remind you that you don't want to brainstorm ideas with people who are going to have an agenda for you that's not going to work for you or be negative Nellies. Okay. So that's why I said it's got to be supportive people who are going to help support you in pursuing something that you really enjoy. And sometimes friends and family, they could be well-meaning, of course, but they may have a really strong opinion and be like, why are you trying to leave your job or whatever? That happened to me when I was looking at being a career coach. My friends and family thought I was crazy, but here I am today and I love it. So we'll give you a second to complete this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up our 3-step process so that you can kind of noodle on this a little bit. and see kind of where we're going with this process. It's very straightforward, but we want you to follow it, please, kind of letter to the law, or letter, whatever that saying is. I always get it wrong, because it's going to help you not get lost in the internet and not get overwhelmed with things. Okay, so we'll give you a moment, and let me just see here. Email again. Oh, the email is in the, if you go to the chat, the email is in there to get the slides. So just, if you can hop into the chat, it's right there. All right, and we'll give you another second to complete the poll, and then we'll share. I am really curious about this one too, because I have found in the past several years, more people are brainstorming ideas with others and thinking about this, which is good. And like we said, what you want to just make sure of is that you're kind of filtering through their ideas with what you know is going to be best for you at the end of the day using our model. Okay, let's go ahead and share our results. Thank you so much. That's awesome. 46% say friends. That's great. 27% are saying family. 15 with a mentor. That's fantastic. Getting a mentor can be so incredibly helpful, not just for figuring out your career direction, but landing and securing that job, et cetera, and just long-term career planning. So that's fantastic. So here's what we want to talk about, excuse me, with this 3-step process. So let me just kind of give you a quick outline of it. So what we want you to do is come up with a list of keywords based on the things we've been talking about so far. What are your values? What are some of your strengths? What are some of your interests? What's some of your past experience? And we want you to plug those into general search sites. And what we mean by that is like Google or Bing or whatever you use. The second thing we'd like you to do after that is to plug those keywords into career brainstorming sites. And we'll give you a couple of examples of those in just a moment. And then finally, to narrow things down even more, plug those into job boards. And it's a funnel for a reason. So we do want you to work through these sites in this order, because it's going to help you cast your net a little bit wider, narrow it down, like we said. Now, one critical piece to working through this 3-step process is we want you to really stay organized. It's a good idea to either use Excel or something like that. It could be a Word document, but we really like Excel because you can have tabs across. It's just a different way of organizing your thinking, which we think is better. But what we want you to put into your Excel sheet is the keywords that you're brainstorming, and change and adjust those keywords based on what you find, which keywords are good, which ones are not that helpful, which new ones you come up with and see based on a job posting that you just saw or an article you just read, okay? The second thing we want you to track in your sheet is your career ideas. And ideally, if you can bucket them into like 2 or 3 buckets or whatever it is, and say, okay, this is my category of, working with data. This is my category of financial analysis. And this is my category of whatever it is. It can help you to kind of keep things organized in that way and have your career ideas like, okay, these are the 3 possible options that I'm considering, or kind of broad strokes paths, if you will. Really key point here is tip number 3, or what we want you to incorporate into your sheet, is when you see websites and web pages online that you want to revisit and read through, we don't want you to read through them right away and start clicking and then you lost where you started. We want you to copy and paste those pages, those URLs, and say, okay, this looks worthwhile reading. I'm going to go back to it later on. So you copy everything that you want to read and sit down and do your reading in a separate step. And then finally, in your Excel sheet, track the salary and requirements for the different career paths that you're considering. So you can start to figure out, am I qualified for these things? Do they look enjoyable? Under this bucket, these 5 look really enjoyable, but I'm going to be more qualified for number 5 or 6. And so that's the one that I want to pursue. That's how you want to start to think about things. So we already know, if we look at this next slide, everyone already knows the general search sites. It's Google, it's Bing, whatever it is. Some of the career brainstorming sites that you can use are listed on this page, and there are more out there. We've got these in a workbook that we use with our clients, but onetcenter.org is one, myplan.com, BLS is another one. These are websites where you can plug in certain keywords And then it will pop back to you like, okay, these are possible jobs that are related to those keywords. And in some of the sites, they'll give you salary requirements. They'll give you, the salary ranges. They'll give you requirements for those jobs, skills required, that type of thing. Some of the job boards, when you get to that step, are ones listed here. We like LinkedIn a lot as one of our main job boards that we have our clients use. But sometimes, by the way, looking at Indeed or Glassdoor, one of these other larger websites, can help you kind of think outside the box a little bit more in terms of some of your ideas. And then finally, you may want to look at industry-specific job boards and identify what some of those are for you, because that can help you brainstorm ideas as well. So the second thing is, or actually, sorry. Okay, so those are the websites that we want to be looking at. The general search sites, the career brainstorming sites, and then the job boards, like we said. Now, here are the 3 steps to go through. And sorry, I just had to tell someone who's in the other room they need to be a little quieter. Okay, so step number 1 is keywords. So the keywords that you want to pull out can be keywords from the career model, like we said. They can be things that are your values, your interests, and your skills. Now, obviously, some keywords like I want to have a good boss or good employer, that's not a career path idea or relevant keyword. So you've got to be smart about this and kind of practical about, okay, what could be the right keywords for me? But these are areas or ways that you can start to kind of pull those out a little bit, okay? Step number 2, with the general search sites, as you're starting to look at these, you don't want to just put in like data analysis or education. You need to put in, obviously, like a career in data analysis or careers or jobs in education, so that you're pulling up the right things. You've got to have like a keyword string for that, versus you can't just put in education. That's going to give you like the definition of education. So just be smart about that too. The step 3 with the career brainstorming sites, like I said a moment ago, this can help you brainstorm additional ideas, narrow down your ideas, and in some cases, depending on the site, help you begin to make it real, because you might be able to see the requirements and the salary. And then finally, as you start to look on the job boards, and then we'll talk about making a plan and then start to move to Q&A. But as you look on the job boards, the reason why we like those as well is if you look on LinkedIn using a keyword, for example, you're going to start pulling up jobs that are actual tangible, like job openings, right? Helps you make it more real, see like what the actual real qualifications are. But what we like about that too is those keywords are going to be pulling things from not just the job title, but the job descriptions. So in some cases, looking on job boards can help you kind of get additional career ideas as part of it too. Okay, so before we start to move to our Q&A for today, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box or the chat, because I have both open. If we do not get to your question today, feel free to email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com. I'd be happy to respond to you. And if you think of a question later, happy to help with that. But the last thing that you want to do is you want to make a plan based on everything we've talked about. So remember, just a recap from today, we talked about defining fulfillment, leveraging our ideal career model. You want to print it out and look through it, step by step. Those were listed on the slide. So if you're wanting to look for the exploring the websites, just email us and we'll send you the slides, because they're listed there. And then career brainstorming is our third one. The next things that you obviously want to do to start landing the right job is updating your resume and LinkedIn profile. And then start networking, start to activate your network. So let's move to action steps. And one of the things that we find is that the clients who work with us who activate their network as soon as possible and start to get that going sooner than later, they're the ones that get the jobs, the new jobs, the fastest. Okay. So those would be part of what I'd like you to incorporate into your plan. So if you could write down one action step for this week, as we start to move into Q&A. And let me get these open here and kind of pull them both up so we've got them. Just as a reminder, if you want a copy of our slides, it's listed here on the slide, and it's also in the chat box too. We're totally happy to share those with you. But an idea or a couple of ideas about what your action steps could be is using the ideal career model, brainstorming and narrowing down your current career ideas that you have using the 3-step process that we talked about, or it could be something completely different. All right, let's go to our questions. Okay, so we've got that there. Yeah, Brooke, if you could, for the first person about how much it costs to use our services, just maybe type in our website. Our pricing and packages are actually listed right on our website under career coaching, or under coaching and under pricing as well. It's listed in multiple places. So feel free to go there or set up a consult with me. Happy to talk with you. To get a copy of the presentation, just email us at the email on the slide here. Is it advisable? Let's go to these 2 questions we've got. So is it advisable to do a strengths test to validate what I'm thinking is right? What are some good tests? Absolutely. I would love it if people would validate what they're thinking just a little bit more to make sure it is the right thing. So we like, for example, the StrengthsFinder.com, that assessment, and the top 5 strengths from that. I don't think you need to do more than the top 5 strengths, but that's what I like. And I think it's a fantastic idea. onetcenter.org, that's one of the career brainstorming websites we referenced. They actually have some assessments on there that you can use too. Okay, long question. Thanks for the warning, heads up. Someone full-time job to pay bills and retire a gig around to find fulfillment. I find it hard to change full-time jobs because I have to negotiate my flexible schedule. I want to find another one that my theme is permanent, driving me to the door. Okay, I'm not sure I totally understand. Let me see if I can answer from what I think this is. And a couple of things I'll say. In some cases for people, their fulfillment, just from a practical standpoint, it needs to come outside of their career path. In some cases, that's okay with people. If there are ways that you can steer your career or even incorporate some of your values into your current job by prioritizing and doing your work in a different way, reprioritizing your day a little bit more, just know that in some cases your values can get honored where you are by making some adjustments there. So that may be something that you want to consider if I'm reading your question correctly. I found through this webinar that my theme is permanent and driving me to the door. Okay, so your situation is probably permanent. So what I would do too is use our ideal career model to say, okay, I've got these, work environment things and the flexibility and everything else. How important are those to me? And does it mean that because those are so important, I'm willing to compromise on some other stuff? I would think about that, like the compromises and kind of prioritizing the things that are really important to you. And that could help you kind of sort through what's going on there. And another question, you're very welcome. Do you know of places that don't freak out that I have been self-employed since 2001? No, I don't. I mean, I don't think that there's actually like companies or a list of organizations out there that, we kind of know that they're okay with being self-employed. It would be an interesting Google search, but I don't know anything like that. I think this is going to be more about, I guess what I would say is, number one, how you're presenting yourself. And number two, if I were to take a stab at it, a smaller organization where you kind of have to operate, like such as like a startup or something, where you kind of have to operate as your own business owner because you're doing a lot of different things and maybe running your own department, that type of thing. I would look at places like that because it's almost like you're acting as you're self-employed. And I think they'd be a little bit less scared about that. It's a good question though. Diana, do you want to say anything just to kind of follow up and before we go, and in case there's any other questions that come through?
There was 2 questions that were sent to me. They'd like to know, can I use ChatGPT to help me brainstorm career ideas?
You can. I absolutely would, but I would not rely solely on it. I would use the other tools in our model to help you, because ChatGPT, just like anything else, it's one tool in the toolkit. It's going to be right about some things, wrong about others. But I love that idea, and we have clients do it.
Okay, and we have another question. How long should I spend on career brainstorming?
Yeah, I would give yourself at least like, gosh, um, a good 3 or 4 weeks. It could be shorter than that if you're already like, if you have some ideas and you work really hard at it, it could be like a 2 week process. But you want to give yourself enough time to like really sit down and do the research. When you know that you're on the right track is when you're starting to see recurring things in the stuff that you're finding online. When you're starting to see the same things over and over, that is validation that, okay, these are the things that I should start to look at. And we've got, let me just see here. I've got to run in just a second, but advice for older job seekers, 56 and did a change at 50, it's time to shift again. You want to focus on why your age is an asset, why you are like dealing with the whole possible ageism, issue, and that you're, on top of like trends and that type of thing. I would just think about though your priorities at this phase in your career. So like, what's most important to you? Are the benefits? Is the retirement stuff most important? So I would use the career model, like we've talked about, but be really clear about prioritizing which of those pieces are going to be the main ones for you to be considering at this point in your life, because it changes over time. Okay. I can answer this one other question. Interviewed for a job recently and it went well. Was about, would you want to be a health coach? Didn't receive the job I interviewed for, but now we're negotiating the health coach option. That's where they want to hire me, but they need to get board and budget approval first. Negotiation tips. This is going to depend a little bit on, I think, what you're asking for. I would do like some research about like salary ranges for this particular type of job. And I would also, ask them up front too, if you haven't already, like, what the range is, and ask for the high end of the range, because obviously you may need to negotiate down a little bit and it's harder to negotiate up. If you want to ask more about that and do like a quick coaching session with us, just let me know. Happy to do that. Cutoff date. Oh, there's a good little nugget, everyone. If you read the Q&A, someone mentioned something there. And it seems like bots are now scanning resumes, navigating, you fall into a black hole. It's a really good idea to like use a resume writer or like a resume scanning system in order to get those, the right keywords onto your resume and onto your LinkedIn. It's a big deal with those. And I think we ought to do that as a webinar too. I talk about this all the time with our clients, is how to deal with this type of stuff with resume and LinkedIn as well. All right. Okay. I think we're good, Diana. I've got to hop off because I've got another call in just a few moments, but I really appreciate everyone being here today. And thank you so much for your really good questions too.
Right, well, thank you, Hallie, again for another wonderful webinar session. I know this will be very helpful for a lot of people that want to find the job that they love. We have another webinar coming up again with Hallie next month on November 9th. That will help continue the conversation on careers. It's called 10 Transferable Skills to Help You Change Careers. So be on the lookout for an email invitation for that. We'll be sending out a follow-up email for the recording for this session. And yeah, we appreciate your time. And thank you again, Hallie and Brooke and Terrence. We look forward to helping you with your career and seeing you all soon. And go Frogs.
Thanks.